Hello and welcome to the Self-Storage Made Simple podcast. I am your host, Thaddeus Campbell, joined today by Jennifer Downer, COO of XPS Solutions, someone I got the pleasure to be introduced to on a virtual summit that we were on together a couple of months ago, and could not wait to get her and come join us. Her talk during that summit was so inspiring to me, and I'm really excited, Jennifer. Thank you so much for joining us, and really excited to dig into a couple things. Honestly, the things that were so inspiring were not the technical aspects about self-storage, but about life. So really excited to spend a half hour with you and dig into your story and talk about you and what you're doing with XPS. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited
We'll
to
look
spend
forward
this
to it.
time
Well, I
with you
always
too.
start the podcast off the same, that this is a self-storage centric podcast, and it's such a niche industry. It's such a unique, and you mentioned this when we were on the virtual summit, just unique people, and in a really good way. I always like to hear the story of how people found themselves into this asset class.
Nobody ever grows up saying, "Hey, I want to be
Very
a
few,
self-storage
unless
market."
their parents were in it.
Okay, right. That's true. That is true. So I'm supposed to be a newspaper journalist. That's where I kind of started. That's what I went to school for. I wrote for a small community newspaper right out of college or during college. It was an internship that turned into a job. I moved to Kissimmee, Florida, to be the associate editor of an international trade magazine that was focused on the airline industry. And then 9/11 happened. So that didn't work out. And I knew a guy that said, "Hey, I have a friend that has a hotel back in Georgia. Would you want to move back home?" And I was desperate to get back home. So took that job, managed that hotel. Then the hotel sold to a family outfit, so they laid us all off. So I was just riding out my severance package. Me and my little, at the time she was probably a 1 year old, and looking online. My full time job was to find my next full time job, and saw an ad for an assistant manager position in Commerce, Georgia, for a third party management firm. Interviewed for that, and then they offered me the job. Actually, yesterday was my 18-year
Oh,
anniversary
that's
in this
awesome.
industry. So I started on January. Yeah, it was really cool. I started at actually got a position as a property manager of one store here in Athens. I live in Athens, Georgia. We had a very
I,
disappointing night last night. We're
I
still
was I wasn't going to
recovering.
be the one to bring it up. We're taping this on January
Too
3rd,
soon.
so what wasn't the best. He still got a national title last year you can hang on to. So
That's right. That's right. It was a fun season. It was a fun season. But yeah, I started there as a property manager of a store here in Athens. It's college town, so it was one of those crazy properties that would get to 100% occupancy really like overnight, and then the mass exodus would happen, and the cleanup, and all the junk that the college kids would leave behind. And but it was really fun. I learned a lot at that one. I'm glad I started at a super busy property. It gave me a lot of knowledge really quickly, that I could carry on with me throughout that career. With that, I stayed with that company for 15 years, so it was a
I
good ride.
love that 18 years, and you talked about that super busy facility. It's so interesting that you think self storage and it seems pretty like monolithic, right? There's one thing. There's such a difference from store to store to store in terms of who you're dealing with, how you're dealing with them, what's the rate of change. We have two stores that we own that are 15 miles apart in the same county. Their occupancy is completely different. One of them, we have 10, 15 people a month moving out. One, we don't have one a month moving out. Interesting that you mentioned that,
Yeah,
and you mentioned how it was good for you to start in that place that was so busy.
yeah. When I started with that company, we had like 25 locations. Um, we grew into 140 in 15 or 16 different states. So, in my position as I grew with the company from manager to district manager, regional manager, and then ultimately COO of that company, I got exposed to so many different types of properties and learn something with every one of them. Um, you're going to have to edit here because my
No
cat
worries. We can edit it without any
is
trouble.
in the way. I am so sorry. And she's like on top
I
of
have a
everything.
meeting
Move,
every week
get
with
down.
my mom for a half hour, and my mom, her cat runs over her screen the whole time. It's hilarious. So I'm used to it. No worries at all.
Yep.
We'll edit that.
Yeah. I'm so sorry. And the
Yeah.
kids
Well,
and the
mom doesn't
husband. So
have
there's a
that
lot. We're
problem
still on winter
anymore,
break.
right?
My mom actually lives with us, which is a blessing. We have an apartment downstairs, so she's here with her little puppy that
That's
also is
awesome.
kind of crazy. But anyway, I'll regroup. Yeah, so in that career, saw tons of different types of properties. I have flashes of them now, like Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where we had three or four sites, sister sites there. I vividly have still have nightmares about the Baton Rouge flood that happened. All of those properties were literally underwater. Our manager got rescued by boat. Like it, I've had so many experiences in this industry, good, bad, and ugly, that have really, I think, shaped me into who I am today in this industry and in life. So you're right. I mean, they can be 5 minutes away, like you said, and be polar opposite. A lot of that I think has to do with where they are, sure, but not in your case, but just in general, how they're managed, how they're run, how much marketing is being done, how much community involvement in those small tertiary markets. Are you really involved in your chamber? Are you out there, in the community? Does your manager live locally and they have friends and family that they can spread the word for you? All those little small things really count, especially now, I think, Thad, where for a while the industry was just sitting and waiting for the next
Yeah.
customer to call or come in and rent the unit, and now we're kind of happen to be a little bit more desperate for those rentals than we were before. So in times like this, I think those things
Yeah,
really
it's
matter.
not 2020, 2021 anymore where you could say, "Hey, we'll put you on a callback list and we might call you 6 months from now," right?
Right.
Little bit different. So a few different things that I want to go down the road of. The first one I'm going to talk to you about, and I'm going to go back to the virtual summit that we talked about. You worked for Absolute Storage Management for many, many years, rose to become a leader of that company. Something that impressed me so much, and I want to ask you about it. You left, and you left for very personal reasons, and I have so much respect for this, and kind of want to ask you to talk me through it, because it's not an easy thing. It's easy to say put your family first. It's very different to actually put your family first when that time comes. So talk to me through that decision, that you had something happen in your family and decided to leave what was, obviously you were the COO of that company, and they had grown to far from 35 stores at that point. How do you have the courage to make that decision?
That's a heavy
I
question.
like I like to put people on
um
the spot.
I see. I will be very, I may get emotional, sorry.
It is a okay.
Mm.
Just
Why are you
know
doing this,
this.
man? What is wrong
This
with
and
you?
you don't have to answer this question at
Whew.
all. Just know that when you said that on the virtual summit, I was blown away. I have a tattoo on my arm. This is the only tattoo I have. I'm trying to show it, but it's the evolutionary
Yeah.
chart. And the only reason I have this tattoo is because it's my purpose in my life to make sure that my kids can be one step ahead of me. This is my daily reminder, right? That, hey, I don't care which one of these things I am. I want my kids to be one step
Hmm.
further along than I am. I aspire to that in my life. And I've done some things in my life to try and make sure that I can be that type of parent for my kids. But man, the courage to walk away from a position with as much authority, and I don't know what you were getting paid, but ostensibly making a good salary. I just have so much respect for that. I can't even begin to tell you. So I apologize for putting you on the spot, but I want you to know that it's
No, it's
coming from a
okay.
place
No.
of just utmost respect. And one of the big reasons I was so excited to have you come on the podcast. Now I feel like a jerk because I kind of sprung it on you, and I didn't mean to
No.
do it that way in any way, shape, or form.
No, it's okay. I was just thinking that I probably, if things, life happens for a reason, as they say, in such a cliche way, but it's true. And I probably would still be there today if life had not happened, but it did. And it was a forced decision that had to happen. It had now I can see it. It had to happen. Oh goodness, we're not friends anymore. Um, we experienced. Well, I had a previous marriage. I was a single mom first, and then got married. Was married for 10 years. Had a nasty divorce, and then met the man of my dreams. Who I have two. He has five, so I adopted his. So we have seven. And I want to talk to you, I guess offline maybe, about your son. Incredible. I'm so proud. I have three autistic myself. So you inspired me with everything that you wrote, even yesterday, was so inspirational to me. It gave me hope. So thank you for that. Um, but yeah, we had an incident with one of our kids, and it was just very. It was just time. It was time to be COO of the Downer household, and that was hard for me. Not just the breakup or the tragedy that we had happen. I've never told anybody this part that next weekend I witnessed a bank robbery. I was in a bank and it got robbed, and then I dropped this frozen pound of sausage on my foot and broke my foot. Like it was back to back to back to back. God saying, "Get your butt in the house and be mom and just chill out. Like just trust
uh,
me. We got this."
that sends chills
So
to me so
that's what
much.
I did, and
It does. You said
it was
something,
crazy. It was
and
crazy.
I
I can.
firmly believe this. As I look back on my life, the worst tragedies I've ever had have always been God redirecting me to a better spot. And it sends chills to me, right? Like and when it happens, you're like, this is tragic. It's so bad. It's so bad. And then you look back 10 years later and you're like, my God, that was the best thing that ever could have happened to me.
Yes, yes, yes. I completely, wholeheartedly agree with that. And I wish that I could tell people now that when they are in the middle of it, you
Yep.
don't want to hear it. You don't want to
Nope.
hear it because you're miserable. But you really are going to, like, it's going to be okay. It really is going to be okay on the
Yep.
other side of this. And and people told me that. They told me I was mourning so many things during that whole process. And people would tell me, "You're going to be okay. It's going to be okay." And I thought, there's no way that this is going to be okay. But you're absolutely right. Now, 3 years out, and I'm like, man, thank God. Not thank God that the
Nope.
bad things happened because they sucked,
Yep.
man. They sucked really bad. But thank God that I am where I am now, that I survived, that I learned the things that I needed to learn, that my family is safe and okay, and that, I've started this career with this awesome company that values my family the way that I do. Not that the other one didn't. It's just, there's culture is important, and we have that at XPS. It just makes me so happy. So long story short, yes, it was very hard. But you know what is really cool for me to see now that I've experienced that as a wife is that it feels like women in our industry right now are making these boss
Truth.
moves, and they're making changes that I think we all have been afraid of for so long. And it's because there haven't been that many of us. So we're like, you find a good job to stay there, work twice as
Yeah.
hard as everybody else, hustle, make it happen. And now I'm like seeing all these people say, you know what? I want something different for my life, so I'm gonna do it. And they're doing it, and it just makes me so proud. I'm so proud of the women in our industry right now.
It's
It's really
been
cool.
one of the blessings for me of having the podcast. And really, for the first year and a half I had it, discredit to me, I had zero women on, but over the last 6 months and it started with Anna Saradzi Herdina, and from her have had a number of amazing women in the industry. And you're right, people that are changing the industry for the better. And I guess another area I wanted to go down. I'm going to try and get off the emotional topics now and start to get a little more technical now. But
Thanks.
you're working for a call center, and I think it's so interesting. 18 years ago, the idea of a call center was not really a big thing. It was, listen, when I got into, I didn't start in storage until 2021. And when I would get a feasibility study on a new ground up development, it would still suggest that we build an apartment above the office for the on-site manager, right? Now, there are still some
Yeah.
areas of the country where that's probably an idea that has some relevance, but for the most part now, we're seeing a move away from that, right? You're seeing, yeah, maybe a new 3-story brand new facility and an infill site is going to have a couple of on-site managers, but you're seeing us go away from that on-site manager. Maybe you have a boots on the ground person who visits every couple days on a lot of sites. How has that transition happened, and how is it changing the industry where you're now having a centralized location answering calls for maybe a bunch of different facilities?
That's a great question. When I was with Absolute, we were clients of XPS. I remember the process of transitioning to a call center, and I was one of those managers at the time who was very against having a call center because A, I felt threatened. B, I thought I could do it better than anybody else could. So I was like, no, we don't need to do that. We don't need to do that. But we did, and it it changed things quickly for us. Missed rentals, missed phone calls, missed opportunities were being answered by people who were just as capable as we were. Honestly, we would listen to the calls, and I still to this day apologize to Shannon Charbonneau, who was my client services person at the time. It is now our VP of Client Solutions at XPS. I would call her every time I heard a call that was not perfect and say, you need to pull this person off. I was just a very different person then, by the way. And you need to pull them off the phone and give them more training. This call was terrible. Well, you know what? I answered some terrible calls as a
Yep.
property manager. I was not perfect all the time. So I see it now from the other side of the curtain, and it is so much more complicated than I ever could imagine. I've listened to one of your podcasts this morning, and you were talking to someone who brought their call center in house. God bless them. I don't know that I could be in the self storage industry, which is unique and challenging right now as it can be, and start up a call center. There's way more to it than I think a lot of people really consider. So, my hat's off to them for making that decision. You got to do what's best for your
Tell me what the
organization.
advantages are to a client. All right, I'm Absolute Storage Management, and I'm managing 100, 150 properties. There's a few different management companies in that space that are of that size. What's the advantage to having an XPS come in and run that operation for them?
Well, you instantly have extended business hours because we're answering your phone calls from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. In some areas. So you are now open. You're open as long as the sun's up. You're open. So um, that in itself, you would be surprised how many calls we take after bankers hours that are people that want to rent units. I mean, we work during those hours. When do you rent your storage unit? Like you're going to do it on Saturday or after hours. So that's one benefit. And then this another one is when I started at XPS, which has been just a year and a half ago, we started hiring only self storage professionals to answer our calls. They understand it. They get it. They have been behind the desk. They know that um, we experience some interesting things in this industry, and they know how to answer those things because they've done it. So you've extended your hours. You're paying less. I know people think that call centers are super expensive. We operate for pennies on the dollar compared to what it would cost to hire an assistant
Let
manager at your site.
Not even
We really
accounting
do.
for the extra
It's a
time that
cost saving.
you're available.
Training, HR issues you no longer have to deal with. I do. All of the things that go along with managing people go away. And I am not an advocate for, let's just have, AI answer everything and no people on site ever and just, no people. I think people are an integral part and will remain a very integral part of our industry forever. I hope. So, But what I do love about XPS is that we can provide the back. Shannon describes it as sitting behind the. I'm not a sports person, except for football. Sitting behind the pitcher's mound with a glove, just ready to catch whatever calls you miss. We're going to catch them. It's like having insurance. So, there's a ton of benefits. The API integration, to me, this stuff is blowing my mind, by the way, as I have walked into this world. It is a tech world. And I had no idea that what has to happen behind the scenes for these calls to be answered in a seamless way where you immediately have access to your property management software. You know what's going on live and in action. You can, take notes in the system. Like the amount of coding hours that our team has to put in to make this thing happen. When I first got there, I was just like, just go push the button. I want, I want this to happen. Just go make it happen. Like, Jennifer, you realize that's like 30,000 lines of code that have to be written. I don't know what that means, but go do it. So
it brings up a great next question for you, and it's kind of a two-parter. The first one is, we kind of met through James Hatfield at LiveSwitch, which is, that software blows my mind. The fact that you can connect with someone live on a video call on your phone is like hard to believe. But where are we going with tech and storage, I guess, would be the question in one part of it. And the other part of it, because I kind of know this about you from getting to behind the curtain in that virtual summit, you like people and you like to be kind to people. It's kind of a driving force of who you are. How do we keep this? Because tech's coming and it's already here and it's only going to get more. How do we keep that balance between tech advancing the industry and making sure that we don't lose sight of the people?
First of all, I do like people. I really like James. He has he has introduced me to cool people like you, and it just makes me so happy. So
Amen to
shout out to
that.
James, who is a rare
Truth.
human being. He really is. Um, and I'm just thinking about James,
I'm
and I
going to
gotta
get you
switch
back.
back.
Tech, where's it going?
Okay,
And then how do we
tech.
keep the balance between tech
Thank
and
you.
people?
Yep. Yeah. It's really cool to see because again, 18 years, that makes me feel really old, but tech, we've always been behind. As an industry, we've always been behind when it comes to tech. And now finally, I'm seeing people utilize their data for things that really matter or asking for their data. We didn't do that before. We just didn't. And tools like LiveSwitch and Kiss and DaVinci Locks and all of the fun things that are coming out in our industry are really, really it's just inspiring, and it gives me this little butterflies of all the fun stuff that we're going to get to do now that we have this. But I do think there will always be a balance, though. Um, in between Absolute and starting a consulting firm, I needed to learn about remote management. So I did two little stints with Atomic and with Copper and learned a tremendous amount about remote management and watched those two companies and other remote companies that have remote management learn about what works and what doesn't. And the number one thing was once you completely remove people, human interaction, boots on the ground, like the whole remote hybrid model. Once you try to really remove people, everything kind of fell apart. And you recognize it quickly. You put it back together. Both of those companies do a phenomenal job, by the way, of doing that. But I think there's always going to have to be a balance. Like at XPS, we use AI now in small doses. We are exploring opportunities for increasing how we use AI. But I don't know if you've ever got on a chat with AI and you just really want to talk to a person. I had this experience like this week. Customer service, like please just give me a human being. And it took forever and I was frustrated. And as a company, because we do really love people, we won't do it until it's ready. You have to train AI just like you have to train people. So we're not going to do it
It's
until
love
it's
it.
where it needs to be. but we are going in that
So
direction.
one of the things I love, and I as I'm preparing for the podcast, I go on your LinkedIn and it's XPS Solutions, experience matters, theirs, yours, ours. I love the fact that theirs was first, right? That it's the customer. And
Yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna couch this one too in this idea of where we're at in the industry. Obviously, the REITs are driving this ECRI model. Cut prices as much as you can when someone comes in the door. Drastic, meaning 300% more rent 12 months later. Um, how do you in 2025, and you mentioned earlier, we're fighting to get people in the door, maybe not going to get better overnight. The mortgage rates just hit 6.97 yesterday, so I don't think the housing market's going to speed up a whole lot this year. How do we balance their experience with the need to get renters in the door?
Great question.
I'm trying to make up for
At the
making
end
you
of the
grab the
day, we're
tissue
all.
earlier. I'm trying to dig myself out of the
I
hole.
mean, we can go into the deep stuff. We can go there if we need to. No, I think like we're all selling the same thing, a box full of air. Like that's we're providing you a place to put your stuff. So standing out, especially now, is just going to be about the experience really mattering. Like if I asked you right now to tell me about the last really bad experience you had when you were checking into a hotel, for example, you're going to instantly remember that time where that girl did the thing and you just, ooh, you'll never go back there. But it should be an experience in self storage where I can ask you, what is the last really good experience like that you vividly remember, and for your company, your self storage facility to be the thing that pops up. I was rented that storage unit, and they just, they went out of their way. They brought me bottles of water. They checked on me while I was moving in. They called me to follow up and make sure I had everything I needed. Like in order to be competitive in the market that we're in, we're going to have to make every experience matter. And you're right. We do say theirs, yours, and ours, with theirs being first, the customer, and yours being the client, because you care about your customers just as much as we do. And ours being, our rental agents, our remote managers, they've all been behind a self storage desk for a
Yeah.
minimum of 2 years. They get what's going on. We want to make sure that everyone's experience really matters. But to your point, yeah, it starts with the customer. It starts with the customer.
Jennifer, I could go on with you for hours and hours and hours, and we're going to have to do this again sometime. I try and keep this to a half hour as much as possible to honor your time and to make it as digestible as possible for the people listening. This is a perfect cutoff point for me not to get rambling. Just want to thank you for coming and joining us, and quite frankly, thank you for navigating my difficult question. I appreciate that, and again, I'm going to apologize because certainly didn't mean to put you on the spot, but just know that I'm someone out here who's cheering for you and just has such massive respect for what you're doing. For those of you who haven't seen the virtual summit, I'm going to post links to that too, so you can catch her there because her story is, as tear jerking as it was today. It's just, you're just an amazing individual. So you deserve some praise for that, and keep doing what you're doing in the industry. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you. I appreciate you inviting me. I appreciate getting to know you better and look forward to future
You're
conversations with
going to
you.
see all of Jennifer's contact information on the bottom. If you need call center help, feel free to reach out to her. She's certainly going to be able to help you on that side of it. That's all for this week's episode of the Self Storage Made Simple podcast. I'm Thaddeus Campbell. As always, if you have land deals or you have an existing facility that you're looking to get rid of, reach out to me and let me know. Thanks to my friends at PropRise for sponsoring the show. As always, they've been such a great support. Certainly appreciate them. And we'll see you guys next week.